Midnight, Louisiana, 1868. The air clings wet to the skin. The cane fields sway in silence. The water tank stands like a coffin on stilts, moonlight breaking across its black surface. A creak, a splash, then another. Screams muffled by water, hands thrashing, chains rattling faintly in the dark. Torches burn low on the verandas, smoke curling upward like prayers unsent. The night swallows the noise. By dawn, 9 men will be gone, swallowed whole by the very place they built. And one woman's name will never be forgotten, Josepha. The sun rises over St. Landry Parish, Louisiana. Heat climbs early, heavy and damp. The mill wheels groan, grinding cane into juice, the air thick with the sickly sweet smell of sugar and ash. Caleb Dunn walks the yard, boots caked in mud and cane fibers. He keeps a bottle of whiskey on his hip, rattling as he walks. He taps his whip against his thigh, in rhythm with the creak of the wheels. His eyes catch every movement. "Boy," he growls at a young worker who stumbles carrying a sack. "You drop that, you'll taste leather." The boy steadies himself, silent. At the far edge of the yard, Elias Boyd labors over the bagasse furnace. His shoulders curve like broken branches, his back scarred like a map of old battles. He coughs into his hand, spits black into the dirt, then mutters low, "Always burning, never ending." Caleb sneers. "Keep it burning, Elias. That fire dies, I'll throw you in to feed it." Elias glances up but says nothing. His eyes flick to the cane fields beyond, where the workers move like shadows under the sun. The narrator's voice cuts sharp. The war had ended 3 years before. But here in Louisiana, chains had only changed their shape. Freedmen signed contracts they could not read, debts they could not escape. The mills fed on sweat, blood, and silence. Caleb pauses by the tank, runs his hand along its wooden boards slick with dew. He drinks from his bottle, tilts his head to the sky. Nothing lasts without discipline, he mutters. Not crops, not men. Elias watches him from a distance, his lips tightening. He turns to the young worker beside him, voice low. Men like him, they think the fire's theirs to command. But fire listens to no one. The boy looks at Elias with wide, frightened eyes. "Best hush that tongue, old man. Done got ears everywhere." Elias wipes sweat from his brow. "Then let him hear." "I've been silent long enough." The mill bell clangs. Workers flinch, shoulders stiff. The day begins with a sound like iron striking bone. In this place, silence was survival. But silence carried a price. Every lash, every scar, every scream swallowed became a debt. And debts demand payment. Caleb takes another drink. Elias feeds the fire. The air thickens with the smell of sugar, smoke, and fear, cut to black. The night was quiet except for the grind of the mill. The wheel turned endlessly, crushing cane, dripping juice, groaning like an old beast that never slept. Beside it, a girl hummed. Her voice was soft, broken but steady. Josepha, the girl who sang lullabies over the grinding wheels. She pressed her hands against the splintered wood, her body swaying with the rhythm of the machine. She sang not for herself, but for the baby strapped to his mother's chest a few feet away. The child crying from hunger and heat. The overseer's whip cracked across the air. "Quiet that noise." Josepha lowered her head, but the song did not die. It slipped between her lips, almost a whisper now. A lullaby that once belonged to her mother. Later, at the water pump, she stole a dipper of cool water. She knelt, pressing it to the lips of that same child, his skin burning with fever. A hand yanked her hair back. Caleb Dunn's shadow loomed tall. "You think this is your charity to give?" Josepha's voice shook. "The baby, he's burning up," Caleb's whip answered. The leather tore across her back once, twice, 3 times. She bit down hard, not a scream, not a cry. Only silence, only her breath ragged in her throat. When he left, the baby's mother crouched beside her. "Why'd you do it, child?" Josepha's lips trembled. "Because someone must." She tucked a small silver comb back into her dress, hidden near her breast. The only thing her mother left her before fever took her. That night, while others slept, Josepha lay awake, the comb pressed against her skin like a secret vow. In a narrow cabin nearby, another flame burned. A boy bent over a scrap of brown paper, ink smudged on his fingers, lips moving silently as he traced the letters. Samuel Reed, the dreamer with ink-stained fingers. Martha, his younger sister, sat cross-legged beside him. "Read it again," she whispered. Samuel smiled faintly. "You know it already." "Read it," she insisted, tugging his sleeve. He whispered, "Freedom." Martha repeated the word like it was a spell. Freedom. A shadow passed the doorway. An older man stopped, listening, then stepped inside. "Boy, you want to get us all killed?" Elias Boyd's voice rasped, low but sharp. Samuel covered the scrap quickly with his palm. "No one saw." "I saw," Elias hissed. "You think done don't hear whispers? He'll skin you alive for less." Samuel held his ground. "My father swung for striking a man who called him nothing. I won't die silent." Elias stared at him, the firelight cutting deep lines across his face. Then he turned away, muttering, "Your father's courage is the reason I'm still bent over a furnace. Courage don't feed you. Courage don't keep you breathing." Samuel whispered, "Then what's life for if not to live like a man?" Elias didn't answer. He walked back into the dark. Later that week, Samuel smuggled scraps of paper under his shirt. He gathered 3 boys and 2 girls in a corner of the mill late at night, the only light a candle stub. "This," he said, writing a crooked F on the paper, "is freedom." "Say it." The children whispered the word as though it might break their tongues. "Again," Samuel said. "Say it like you mean it." "Freedom." A sound stirred outside. Footsteps. Samuel blew the candle out, heart hammering. The door creaked open. It was Josepha. She slipped inside, her back still raw with fresh wounds. "You'll get us all killed," she whispered. Samuel met her eyes. "You afraid?" "Yes." "Then stay," he said, voice calm, steady. "Stay afraid with us, but don't stay silent." She hesitated. Then she sat down beside Martha, who smiled and reached for her hand. "Here," Martha said softly, pulling the silver comb from Josepha's pocket where it peeked loose. She ran it through her tangled hair. "Your mama's?" Josepha nodded, throat tight. Martha hummed low as she worked, a song of their mothers, the same lullaby Josepha once whispered at the mill. Her voice was gentle, almost fragile, yet it carried weight in the silence. Samuel whispered as he traced letters again. "Every scar, every chain, every name they took from us, one day it'll be written down. They can't erase it forever," Josepha murmured. "Words don't break chains." "No," Samuel said. "But they remind us the chains aren't meant to last." Martha smiled, pressing the comb into Josepha's hand once more. Mama's song. "Samuel's letters, your strength. That's more than they'll ever understand." Outside, the wheels of the mill kept grinding. Inside, 3 young souls carved out a promise in whispers, in ink, in song. Seeds of resistance are planted in silence. And silence never lasts forever. The moon hung low over the mill yard, its pale light stretching across rows of cane like broken glass. Samuel sat on a fallen log, tracing letters into the dirt with a stick. His lips moved silently. A figure stepped out of the shadows. Jonas Hale, the friend who feared shadows. His hands shook when he spoke, though his voice tried to sound steady. "You keep scratching those letters, someone's gonna see." Samuel didn't look up. "Let them." Jonas kicked the dirt, scattering the words Samuel had written. "That's the problem, Sam. You want them to. You want Dunn to catch you, just so you can prove you ain't afraid." Samuel finally lifted his eyes, steady, unblinking. "Fear's already killed us. Just slower." Jonas shifted, wiping sweat from his brow. "Your daddy swung for striking a man. I saw it. I was there. You think I forgot his legs kicking in the air? You want Martha to see the same?" Samuel's grip tightened on the stick. "That's why I write. That's why I teach." So his death wasn't just fire gone cold. Jonas shook his head, stepping closer. "I'll stand by you, Sam, but you need to know, courage ain't the same as survival. Don't forget that." Samuel smirked faintly. "Then stay by my side, Jonas. If I fall, at least I won't fall alone." Jonas looked away, muttering, "Shadows don't fall." They vanished days later in the cane fields. Josepha worked with her head low, sweat soaking the back of her dress. The air buzzed with flies, thick with the smell of cane juice turning sour in the sun. A soft voice startled her. "You're Josepha, aren't you?" She turned sharply. Standing near the edge of the field was Anna Whitfield, the daughter of a mill owner with a heart out of place. She wore a pale dress far too clean for this place, her gloves white, her voice tentative but clear. Josepha's hand instinctively went to her pocket, checking for the silver comb. "You shouldn't be here." Anna glanced over her shoulder nervously. "I know, but I wanted to see you." "Why?" Josepha's tone was sharp. Suspicion edged every syllable. Anna pulled a small book from beneath her shawl. She held it like contraband. "Because I thought maybe this could help." Josepha stepped back. "What is it?" "A psalter," Anna whispered. "The book of Psalms. My mother read them to me when I was a child. There's strength in words." Josepha hesitated. The memory of Samuel's scraps of paper flickered in her mind. "You shouldn't give me this." "If Dunn finds it," Anna's voice softened, almost pleading, "then hide it. But take it, please." Josepha took the book, fingers trembling. The leather was soft, smelling faintly of lavender. She felt its weight like fire in her palm. "I don't need your pity," Josepha said. Anna's eyes glistened. "It isn't pity, I don't know what it is. Maybe hope." Josepha turned away, tucking the book deep under her skirt. "Hope's a dangerous gift." Anna reached for her arm but stopped short, lowering her hand. So is silence. Their eyes met briefly. Josepha looked away first. By night, Josepha showed the book to Samuel and Martha. They sat in their cabin, the candle flame flickering. Samuel ran his fingers across the pages with reverence. This is more than words. This is proof. Proof they know we're more than beasts." Josepha's voice was cold. "Or proof they want us to stay quiet, buried in prayers." Martha tilted her head, curious. "She gave it to you. Why?" Josepha shook her head. "I don't trust her reasons." "But the book? It feels alive." Samuel smiled faintly. "Alive is enough." Martha reached for the comb in Josepha's hair, braiding slowly as she hummed the lullaby. "If it gives you strength, keep it. If it gives you fear, burn it." Josepha closed her eyes, the lullaby pressing against her ears like balm. She whispered, "Maybe both." Weeks later, whispers swept through the yard. "Someone's been teaching," a worker muttered. "Someone's been passing books. They'll hang the whole lot of us if Dunn finds out." Rumors grew like weeds. By the furnace, Elias Boyd shook his head grimly. "A whisper of words is louder than any scream." Dunn's eyes grew sharp. He walked the yard more often, whip-tapping his leg, questions dripping from his mouth. "Who's carrying letters? Who's whispering psalms? Don't lie to me. I'll smell it on your breath." The workers lowered their eyes, lips sealed. But Dunn's suspicion clung to the air, heavy and unrelenting. Josepha lay awake at night, clutching the psalter against her chest, the silver comb tangled in her hair. She thought of Anna's pale face, of Samuel's hunger for words, of Martha's lullabies. Her world split in two. Chains by day, fragile threads of connection by night. She could not tell which would save her or which would destroy her first. Every bond carries a cost, and every gift carries a shadow. In the dark, seeds of betrayal had already begun to grow. The air was thick with humidity, heavy enough to choke. The mill yard lay quiet, except for the steady creak of the water tank. Workers moved like shadows, heads down, their bodies bent under the day's load. Josepha slipped her hand into her dress pocket, fingers brushing the folded scrap of paper. A letter, Anna's careful script. "I see you. I pray for you. Be strong." She had read it 100 times. Each word burned like fire, both balm and curse. She tucked it deeper into her pocket. But Caleb Dunn's eyes were everywhere. He staggered from the veranda, whiskey bottle in hand, whip coiled at his side. His boots crushed gravel with each step. He scanned the yard, eyes sharp as broken glass. "Josepha!" Her heart clenched. She froze. "Come here." Slowly, she approached. Caleb's voice dripped with poison. "What you carrying?" "Nothing." He grabbed her wrist, yanked her close. His hand shoved into her pocket, dragging the folded letter into the light. "What's this?" She stayed silent, throat tight. Caleb unfolded the paper, squinting. His lips curled. "Pretty letters. Who taught you? Who put this sin in your hands?" Josepha whispered, "No one." His eyes narrowed. "You lie." From across the yard, Samuel stepped forward. "It's mine." Every head turned. The yard stilled. Even the mill wheel seemed to hush. Caleb's grin widened, teeth yellowed from whiskey. Well, well, the dreamer with ink-stained fingers, he shoved Josepha aside, advancing on Samuel. You want to play preacher? Want to play schoolmaster? I'll give you a lesson you won't forget. Samuel stood his ground, shoulders squared. It's just a letter. Caleb's whip snapped across his face before the words even settled. Samuel staggered back, blood spilling from his lip. The workers gasped, but no one moved. Heads bowed, hands trembling. Martha screamed, "Stop!" But her voice cracked, breaking into sobs. Caleb struck again, the whip curling across Samuel's chest, tearing fabric, tearing flesh. Samuel collapsed to his knees. Caleb crouched over him, breath reeking of liquor. What's it say? Go on. Read it to me. Samuel's voice was faint but defiant. It says you can't chain a soul. Caleb's boot drove into his ribs. Samuel coughed blood, spitting red into the dirt. Josepha rushed forward, but Dunn's whip cracked near her face, halting her mid-step. Stay back, girl, he hissed, or I'll carve your back into ribbons. Samuel gasped, clutching the dirt. His eyes flicked to Josepha, then to Martha. Don't. Bow your heads. Caleb spat on him, the words falling like a curse. You can read your prayers to the devil now. He turned, raising the whip again. Workers flinched but did not move. Martha sobbed openly, clutching her brother's arm, whispering his name. Josepha stood frozen, fury burning through her veins like fire under skin. She stared at Caleb, his whip, his bottle, his smirk. In that moment she knew survival was no longer enough. Silence would never protect them. She would not bow again. Betrayal has many faces. Sometimes it wears a ribbon dress, offering words of comfort. Sometimes it wears boots and carries a whip. But always, betrayal bleeds. The workers returned to their labor, their silence heavier than chains. Josepha held Martha as Samuel bled in the dirt. Her hand clenched around the silver comb, the teeth digging into her palm. A vow formed in her chest. Sharper than steel, by fire, by water, by blood. This would not end in silence. Night pressed thick against the mill compound. Cicadas screamed in the distance, a chorus that masked smaller sounds. Hushed voices, scraping metal, the hurried breath of conspirators. Samuel still bore scars from the beating. His ribs ached, his face swollen, but his eyes burned with resolve. He sat hunched at the edge of the smithy, the glow of hot coals lighting his jaw. Across from him stood Isaac Green, sleeves rolled high, hammer dangling loosely from his massive hand. His knuckles were scarred, skin tough as leather. Isaac spoke low. You sure you want this road, Samuel? Ain't no turning back. Samuel coughed, then straightened. There was no turning back the moment Dunn spat on my blood. Josepha stepped from the shadows, silver comb glinting faintly in her hand. We don't ask if, only how. Isaac studied her, then gave the faintest nod. How then? He turned to the forge, sliding a hunk of iron into the fire. Sparks leapt like fireflies. Keys, he muttered. Water tanks, storage locks. Give a man a key, you give him a weapon. Josepha's voice was steady. Can you make them? Isaac smirked, sweat shining on his brow. I can make a lock sing lies if I want to, the iron hissed as he plunged it into water. Steam curled upward, cloaking their faces. Later that week, the midwife's hut smelled of herbs, damp earth, and smoke. Clara bent over a wooden bowl, crushing roots with the flat of her palm. Her hands were stained green, her wrists wrapped with faded cloth. Josepha leaned close, watching. What's it do? Clara's voice was calm, almost motherly. A root can heal. The same root, given another way, can end a man's breath before dawn. She lifted the pestle, grinding slower. This here, wolfsbane. A drop, maybe two in his cup. Too much and it's bitter, gives you away, but just enough. She blew softly across the powder. The heart forgets to beat, Josepha's throat tightened. And no one would know? Clara's eyes glimmered in the firelight. Fever, stroke, the body gives up. Who can say what called him? Josepha thought of Caleb Dunn, the reek of whiskey, the crack of his whip. She whispered, Teach me. Clara met her gaze, long and unflinching. Then she pushed the bowl toward her. Your hands now. I'll guide. Josepha placed her fingers on the pestle. They trembled at first, then steadied. She ground the root to dust, the smell sharp and bitter in her nose. Clara murmured, Good. you carry your mother's comb. Now you carry her strength. By day, nothing changed. The mill wheel creaked, chains clattered, overseers barked. By night, messages ran like veins through the compound. And the one who carried them was little Ben, barefoot, skinny, 12 years old, but faster than the crack of a whip. His feet barely touched the ground as he slipped from hut to hut, whispers tucked in his palm. One night, he darted past the stables, clutching a folded scrap Samuel had written, "If not us, then who?" But a shadow blocked his path. Caleb Dunn. The overseer swayed with his bottle, eyes glassy but sharp. "Boy, where you running?" Ben's breath caught. He shoved the paper into his mouth, chewing fast, bitter ink smearing his tongue. Caleb stepped closer, towering. "Answer me!" Ben swallowed hard, forcing the scrap down. He coughed, then managed, "Fetchin' water, sir." Caleb studied him, suspicion flickering. He grabbed Ben's arm, squeezing hard enough to bruise. "You lie too easy." Ben bit his lip, eyes watering. Caleb shoved him away. "Go on then. And run slower, boy. Looks guilty, running fast." Ben nodded quickly, heart hammering, before bolting into the dark, this time careful to pace his steps. In another corner of the compound, Elias Boyd watched with furrowed brow. He was no overseer, just a hired man, his back bent from years of hauling. He'd seen Samuel slip into the smithy, Josepha disappear into Clara's hut. He noticed little Ben vanish into the night too often. He said nothing. Not yet, but silence was its own kind of choice. Each night, Josepha knelt by the edge of the fields. She placed her mother's silver comb in the dirt, the teeth pointing upward like a crown buried in soil. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "By blood, by bone, by fire. I swear!" Beside her, Samuel hunched over scraps of paper, scribbling with stolen charcoal. His words were ragged but sure. "If not us, then who?" The scraps were hidden under a loose board, pressed flat with the stone. Josepha asked once, "Why write words no one may read?" Samuel smiled faintly, though his lip still bled. "Because one day, someone will. Every rebellion begins with whispers. Keys forged in secret, roots ground into powder, words scratched in the dark, and oaths buried in the dirt, waiting to bloom." The mill slept, but beneath its silence, a storm gathered, and Caleb Dunn, drunk in his quarters, did not yet hear the thunder. The night began with laughter. Inside the plantation hall, 9 men sat at the long oak table, smoke curling from cigars, glasses sweating with whiskey. The lanterns threw golden haze across their red faces. Their coats lay open, bellies full, voices slurred. One lifted his glass. "To profits doubled this season." Another answered, "And to Dunn, who keeps the lash true." Caleb Dunn smirked, whiskey dripping down his chin. "I ain't a tongue on this land dares whisper freedom, not while I breathe." The room roared with drunken applause, but outside in the shadows, breath was measured. Eyes sharp, heart set. Isaac Green pressed his iron shoulders against the hall doors, the false locks already in place. Jonas Hale stood with him, trembling but steady enough to nod. "Once they see the fire," Jonas whispered, "they'll rush straight where you want them," Isaac grunted. "Let's hope their whiskey legs don't stumble too far." Clara slipped past, a bundle of herbs tucked in her apron, her voice low as prayer. "It's already in their cups. Their bodies'll drag heavy when the time comes." Samuel crouched by the window, hand pressed against his ribs, still weak but burning inside. He pulled the wick from the lantern, letting the flames sputter to smoke. Darkness crept in like a tide. Josepha stood still in the doorway's shadow, her mother's silver comb clenched in her fist. She whispered to herself, "By blood, by bone, by fire." Then she stepped forward. Inside, one of the owners squinted. "Damn lantern's gone out." Another muttered, "Too much smoke from the cane pile, maybe." Josepha's voice cut the room, soft, steady. "It is smoke. The fields are burning." All heads turned. She stood there, a shadow rimmed in firelight spilling through the open door. Behind her, the glow of flames licked the night sky. The sweet stench of burning sugar filled the room. Caleb Dunn lurched up. "Girl, what in hell?" Josepha's voice carried like a blade. "Hell's already here." Then Isaac slammed the door shut, bolts snapping into place. The room trapped. chaos rose like a storm. The owners stumbled to their feet, coughing, cursing. Samuel and Jonas doused another lantern, plunging the hall deeper into shadow. Sparks from the cane fire danced through the window, painting the walls in red. One owner staggered, clutching his throat. "Whiskey! What's in the whiskey?" Clara's whisper unseen in the dark. The Earth's answer. Caleb grabbed Josepha by the arm, his breath hot with liquor. "You little snake!" But she did not flinch. She pointed past him, toward the rear of the hall where the water tank gleamed in the distance, fire reflecting on its surface. "Water," she said. "There's water outside." "Run to it, run!" The men panicked. One by one they stumbled toward the back doors, drawn to the promise of cool salvation. Jonas and Isaac flung the doors wide, revealing the tank beyond. Smoke and flame pushed them out, herding them like cattle. The night was alive with shouting. Chains rattled, fire hissed, feet thudded against the earth. The owners surged toward the tank, shoving, gasping. Some tore at their collars, others coughed blood from Clara's slow poison. Caleb Dunn shoved to the front. "Move, I'll drown the fire out." He reached the tank, heaving himself onto the edge. The others clawed after, boots slipping, hands scraping wood. Josepha followed, each step slow, deliberate. Her comb slipped from her pocket, clattering against stone. She left it. Samuel caught up, voice ragged. "Now, Josepha, now." She nodded once. Isaac and Jonas slammed the tank's outer gate shut, barring escape. The men inside screamed, thrashing against each other. Whiskey-heavy bodies tumbling into the water. The sound was terrible. Splash after splash, men clawing, boots kicking. The water's surface shattering under their weight. Martha, hidden in the cane shadows, pressed both hands over her mouth, eyes wide, glassy with terror. One owner managed to pull halfway out, his fingers clinging to the rim. His eyes met Josepha's. "Mercy!" he croaked, voice bubbling. "Mercy!" Samuel staggered forward, seized by fury. He struck the man's fingers with a shard of wood. The owner fell back with a splash. But in that moment, another caught Samuel from behind, a desperate swing of a heavy cane hook. The metal tore across his side. He gasped, blood spilling hot over his shirt. Josepha screamed his name. Samuel collapsed to one knee, clutching his wound. "Finish it!" he rasped. "Don't stop." Josepha's face hardened. She shoved past, seized the last man clinging to the tank's lip, Caleb Dunn himself. His whiskey eyes glared, teeth bared. "You'll hang for this." Her voice was ice. "So be it." With both hands she shoved. Dunn fell backward into the churning mass of bodies. The tank swallowed him whole. The thrashing slowed. The screams thinned. Then came only splashes, weaker, until silence reigned, broken only by the hiss of burning cane. Josepha sank to her knees. Smoke smeared her face, tears cutting clean lines through the ash. Samuel lay bleeding, propped against the tank's side. Martha crept from the shadows, kneeling by him, her small hands trembling. "Don't leave me, Samuel, please." He smiled faintly, blood at his teeth. "Keep singing, Martha. The world needs songs." His hand fell limp. The night went still. Josepha lifted her gaze to the water where the bodies of 9 men floated, faces pale in the firelight. Chains and fire had driven them here. Now water became their grave. 9 men who thought themselves masters, drowned by their own thirst, by their own fear. And the hands they believed bound were the very hands that pulled them under. The silver comb lay in the dirt, forgotten, glinting in the firelight. Morning broke grey, a sky swollen with storm. The water tank still reeked of death. Workers were forced to pull the bloated bodies of the 9 men from its depths. They laid them in a row beside the mill, water dripping from their mouths, eyes glazed. The air hung heavy with smoke and silence. Anna Whitfield stood apart, the hem of her pale dress stained with mud. Her father's body was second from the end. His hand still curled as if grasping for something unseen. She whispered, "Papa." Her lips trembled, but no tears came. Instead, questions. She turned to the widow of another owner. "Did they suffer?" The woman's face twisted. "Suffer? They were murdered like dogs." Anna's eyes lingered on Josepha's silver comb, found in the dirt nearby, and now lying on a table like evidence. Her voice shook. "And if the dogs were the ones chained?" The widow recoiled. "You sound no better than them." Anna whispered to herself, "Then maybe I'm not." Caleb Dunn had survived the water by sheer force, dragged out half-dead, lungs burning. Now he staggered through the compound, face purple with rage, ribs bruised. His voice carried like thunder, "Find them! Scour the fields, the swamps, every rotten corner." Soldiers and deputized men swept the land, rifles in hand. Workers were lined up, questioned, beaten for silence. Dunn barked at one man who stammered too long. "You seen Josepha? You seen Reed's boy?" The worker shook his head, lips trembling. Dunn struck him down with the butt of his gun. "Then you're blind and useless." Word spread quick. Samuel had been captured, his wounds slowing him. They dragged him back to the mill, shackles heavy around his ankles. Josepha fled into the cane fields, the fire masking her trail. Some said Clara hit her. Others swore little Ben ran with her into the swamps. No one knew for sure. In the quarters that night, whispers curled through the dark like smoke. They drowned 9 men, and like stones pulled to the deep. Our Josepha lit the fire herself, they say. "You did Samuel Reed, he's the one they'll hang." Children listened wide-eyed. Mothers hushed them with lullabies. But the songs carried new weight now. Jonas Hale sat on the edge of his cot, head in hands. "We stirred the storm," he muttered. "And now we'll all be struck down," Isaac Green growled. "Better the storm than the lash. I'll take fire over chains any day." Elias Boyd leaned in the doorway, silent, his eyes hollow. He had watched, said nothing, done nothing. Now guilt pressed on him like a millstone. Finally he whispered, "Silence is its own whip." I held it in my hand. No one answered. The trial came quick as a noose can be tied. Samuel was dragged before the magistrate, his body thin, wound, festering. He stood with shackled hands, back straight. The hall was packed, widows in black, overseers hungry for blood, workers forced to watch. Caleb Dunn sat at the front, bruised but grinning, a viper waiting for the strike. The magistrate thundered, "You stand accused of murder, arson, treason against your betters. How do you plead?" Samuel's voice was rough but steady. "I plead truth." They drowned on greed before ever touching water. Gasps rippled through the room. The magistrate slammed his gavel. "Enough, you will hang." Caleb leaned forward, spit flying. "Hang him high. Make the others see." On the gallows, the rope coiled above Samuel like a serpent. Martha stood in the crowd, clutching the silver comb in one hand, Samuel's scraps of words in the other. Her small voice carried through the silence. "Samuel, don't be afraid." He smiled at her, weak but shining. "I ain't afraid, little sister." The hangman pulled the hood over his head. Samuel's final words thundered across the square. "Better the tank take them than chains take us." The trapdoor snapped. The rope groaned, and the crowd exhaled as one. Anna Whitfield turned away, tears finally breaking loose. A soldier touched her shoulder. She shook him off. "What justice is this?" she whispered. "When the lashes called order, and the cry for freedom called crime?" No one answered her. That night in the quarters, Martha sat alone. She laid Samuel's scraps of paper on the dirt floor, smoothing each with trembling fingers. His words stared back at her. "If not us, then who?" She pressed the silver comb beside them. Tears streaked her face, but her jaw hardened. She braided her own hair, whispering Josepha's lullaby to herself. Elias Boyd stumbled in, drunk, hollow-eyed. He dropped to his knees before her. "Child, I kept my tongue. I watched, and I did nothing. That silence, it drowned me too." Martha did not look up. She whispered the words again, louder this time. "If not us, then who?" The candle guttered. Shadows danced on the wall like chains unbroken, like fire refusing to die. 9 drowned in water, 1 hung by rope. The rest left to carry memory like a wound. And silence was the heaviest chain of all. The cane fields grew back. The water tank was patched, filled again, used for years. But the soil remembered, and so did the people. Years passed. Reconstruction brought new flags, new laws. But in the cabins by the mill, stories carried heavier weight than statutes. At night, mothers sang lullabies differently. Where once the songs promised sleep, now they carried warnings. "Hush, child, hush. Or the tank will take you like it took the masters." Children clutched their blankets tighter, eyes wide, never certain if the tank ghosts were real. Old men gathered by firelight whispering, "They say you can still hear the chains at night." Rattling in the cane, another would add, or the splash of boots in water. Men clawing for air. A younger one leaned in, voice low. And Josepha, she walks the rim of the tank, silver comb in her hair, looking for her brother who never came home. To some, her name was a curse. To others, a prayer. The rusted chains pulled from the drowned bodies were never thrown away. Someone left them near the tank's edge. Over time, vines wrapped them, iron bleeding into earth. Workers touched them like relics, hands brushing as if to gather courage. One woman pressed her palm to the links and whispered, "Give me strength, Josepha." Letters resurfaced. Scraps Samuel had written, hidden under a floorboard, were found long after the gallows claimed him. Words scrawled in charcoal, "If not us, then who?" The paper was brittle, the ink faded, but the phrase outlived the page. It became a whisper in marches, a cry in church pulpits, a banner decades later in streets where voices rose again. Through Reconstruction, the tale traveled. Friedman told it as proof of power, that chains could be broken, that masters could drown, but others twisted it, painting Josepha as demon, whispering that rebellion bred only death. Children in the town grew up with two versions: mind your tongue, or Josepha will find you, or raise your voice. For Josepha already did. By the time railroads cut through the South, travelers spoke of the tank ghosts. The drowned 9, they said, still thrashed in the water at night. Wagon drivers refused to stop near the mill. Horses spooked at the smell of burning cane that wasn't there. Martha grew old, but her hair always braided with the silver comb. When asked of her brother or Josepha, she would only murmur, "Songs don't die." They only changed their tune, she passed before telling more. But the children she sang to carried her songs into their own years. In the early 20th century, labor organizers invoked the story. "Remember Josepha," they cried, "the one who lit the fields." To them, she was not ghost, but general, proof that power could shift. During the civil rights marches, preachers lifted Samuel's words as scripture. "If not us, then who?" His gallows cry echoed against police batons and fire hoses. Even then, whispers of the tank lingered. Protesters chained themselves to courthouse gates, calling the iron their testament. Reporters asked why. One answered, "Because every chain has a breaking point." Josepha showed us that. The water tank rusted, abandoned, the mill rotting beside it. But some nights, under a heavy moon, locals swore they saw ripples move, though no stone had fallen. Others swore they heard a woman's voice, soft as lullaby, carried by the wind. "Hush, child, hush." What began as blood and fire became whisper and song. Chains turned relic, lullabies turned warnings, and a silver comb once hidden became a crown of memory. Josepha, executioner or avenger, ghost or saint, remained, not in the water tank, but in every voice that dared to speak when silence was demanded. The water tank stands empty now, rust creeping down its sides, vines swallowing its base. Time erodes iron, but not memory. 9 men drowned in it. One hanged for it. One fled into legend. And the rest lived in the shadow of silence. What is justice when measured in bodies? When chains are broken by fire and poison, is that freedom, or simply another weight carried forward? Josepha's name lingers like smoke. To some, she was a murderer. To others, a savior. Both truths coiled together, inseparable. Samuel's words remain carved deepest. If not us, then who? He believed silence was worse than the rope, that chains were a slower death than drowning. Was he right? The children who once heard lullabies of warning grew into parents who passed the story again, binding memory tighter than iron. Vengeance became myth. Myth became scripture. But the question echoes still. Is freedom worth blood if peace cannot be bought otherwise? Can survival be built on silence, or only on voices willing to shatter it? Every rebellion leaves behind relics, chains rusted, letters buried, lullabies altered. These relics are not just fragments of the past. They are mirrors, showing us what we choose to endure and what we dare to end. In Josepha's silence before the fire, In Samuel's cry from the gallows, in Martha's quiet braiding of her hair, we hear not answers, but questions, and questions have the longest life of all. Josepha chose the tank over the chains. She chose fire over silence. Her story was buried in whispers, carried in shadows, but tonight it has risen into your ears. And now the question is no longer hers. It is yours. If you were in her place, would you forgive or would you burn it all down? Would you bow your head and survive another day, or strike, knowing the price could be your life? Every era has its tanks. Every generation its chains. Some are iron, some are written in laws or carved into silence. History does not end, it waits. It waits for someone to answer. So tell us, in the comments, in your own words, what would you have done? Would you have followed Josepha into the fire? Or turned away like so many did? Because stories like this one, they were never meant to be forgotten. They were warnings, they were maps, they were blood turned into legend. If this story unsettled you, if it made you think, share it. Subscribe, keep the echoes alive, because silence is what buried them. And silence is what keeps their chains unbroken.